Yes, I have 10 minutes. 15. Can I hear 20? 25? 30? You guys are watching this happening, right? No, it won't take that long. You know, um, I once heard someone say, don't be a thermometer, be a thermostat. And my reaction was, he's like, what? I have a question, sir. Like, what? Don't be a thermometer, be a thermostat. Can I get a little bit of elaboration there? And he explained a thermometer doesn't change anything around it, it registers the temperature. It's always going up and down depending on what's surrounding it. A thermostat regulates its surroundings and what changes it when it needs to be changed, right? A thermostat is in control and doesn't a thermostat is in control and doesn't change with its surroundings. Instead, it changes the surroundings. When you're a thermometer, you lack the ability to change things, and instead, the surroundings change you. And I thought that's a pretty good lesson, isn't it? One of my favorite chapters of the Bible is Philippians chapter 4, and I think Philippians 4 illustrates that idea of not letting your surroundings change you, but rather being stable and allowing yourself to change your surroundings. Because one of the verses that is probably one of the most popular verses comes out of Philippians 4. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Chapter 4, verse 13. And that's a very, very awesome verse. But I think a lot of the times we neglect the context of it. You add the context in it, and it becomes that much deeper. He's got several really powerful things in chapter 4. I mean, at first he says, verse 11, I can do all things. Or he says, I can accept all things. Verse 13, I can do all things. Verse 18, I have all things. Paul himself in chapter 4 talks about being a thermostat, not a thermometer. He says, I've been in all these different situations, and I was able to get through all of them. And that's what chapter 4, verse 13 is all about. Contentment is kind of the idea, not complacency, not a false peace based on ignorance. You know, Contentment. It's not escaping from the world, it's this abiding peace in the middle of battle. In chapter 4, verse 11, Paul says something very, very powerful. He said, I've learned in whatever situation I am in how to be content. That's a pretty powerful thing to hear, isn't it? Let me go ahead and read the text. I want to read verse 10 to 14 of chapter Philippians 4. Paul said, I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger and abundance and need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Too often we get caught up in our surroundings, right? Like a thermometer, right? You get caught up in the surroundings, and when the surroundings are great, you're great. But when your surroundings are bad, you're bad. You go up and down with your surroundings, and that produces a roller coaster life. It really does, where you're up and you're down. You never have any sort of stability, right? It reminds me of what Job said. He says, "Man who is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble." Right? Our life is few days and full of trouble. In life, trials just happen. Difficult things are going to happen. And if you allow yourself to be heavily affected by the difficulties in life, that's going to make your life that much more difficult. How is it that some people have such difficulty in their lives and they're able to just keep through it, right? They don't let it affect them. They're still able to have joy. That is something every single person can do. But when we're a thermometer and we're allowing the circumstances to dictate how we are and where our mind is and where our heart is, your life is going to be that much more difficult. The problem, I think a lot of it is discontentment. We're discontent with an imperfect life, discontent with the problems, discontent with the trials. Get rid of the idea that your life should be paradise. We live in a broken world. I think, life is difficult. And once you accept that life is difficult and truly accept it, it's not going to be as difficult anymore. Because I think part of every trial, the worst part of every trial, is the discontentment. The idea in our head that that should not have happened. Who said it shouldn't have happened? When you allow your external life to dictate your inner life, your mind and your heart, the result is anxiety, worry, frustration. That's walking by sight and not by faith. Living by faith is trusting something you don't see. You trust things you don't see every day. When you turn on your car, you trust it's going to start and not blow up, right? I mean, when you flick a light switch, you trust that it's going to turn on. You trust things you don't see every day. Let God be one of them, right? There was a man who was hiking on a mountain and he fell off a cliff, but he grabbed a branch right before he fell. And he's shouting, "Help, help! Is anyone up there?" And then finally he hears a voice call back. And he says, "I can help you. But here's the thing. In order for me to save you, you got to believe in me. Do you trust me?" And the man's shouting up, "I trust you. I trust you." And the man shouts down, "If you trust me, let go of the branch and I'll save you." The man holding the branch, he looks down at the cliff, looks up, he shouts, "Is anyone else up there?" Paul, he's looking on the bright side of things. And I think that's what joy is. I think joy is, it's not always a smile on your face. It is this optimism based upon God. This ability to see the blessings and the working of God and to trust God even whenever it's hard. God had seen Paul through some very terrible events, and he trusted God to see him through the future events, right? When Paul says, "I have learned in every situation how to be content," that is a powerful thing to say, right? Because there were some times whenever Paul had to fend for himself. Sometimes churches sent him money and he had more than he needed, right? But there are other times whenever Paul, he was working for his meals that day, right? And Paul said, "I can be content in whatever situation. I have learned the secret." And to me, I hear that and I'm like, ooh, what's the secret? Right? I want to lean in and figure out what that secret, that piece of information. And if you learn this piece of information, then it doesn't matter what situation you're in, you can get through it. You can be content. Doesn't matter what situation, whether you have too much or too little. And I'm like, what's the secret? Tell me the secret. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. How do you get through life? How do you get to the point where you're unaffected by the circumstances of your life? It's rooted in the invisible Christ, in the invisible God and Christ at his right hand. When your joy comes from money and you lose money, you're not going to have joy. When your joy comes from a full belly and you don't have a full belly, you're not going to have joy. When your joy comes from people praising you, and people aren't praising you, you're not going to have joy. When your joy comes from having a life free of trouble, you're never going to have joy. But if your joy is rooted in Christ, if your strength is rooted in Christ, Christ is always going to see you through it, and you're always going to have joy. Even when troubles surround you, that's 10 minutes. All right, I'm done. No, give me a couple more minutes. Even when troubles surround you with Christ, you are not defeated. Even when you don't know what to do, with Christ, you have hope. Even when you're being mistreated, with Christ, you're not alone. Even when life gets you down, Christ helps you get back up. Even when you don't have enough, Christ is enough. When you have more than you need, the blessings are from Christ. Whatever you have, wherever you are, Christ is how you move forward. I got this one story I just want to tell, a short one. There was one night a house caught fire, and a young boy was forced to flee to the roof of the house. And the father stood on the ground with his arms stretched out. And he's yelling to his son, "Son, jump, I'll catch you." And the little boy looked down, and all he saw was smoke. He was afraid to jump off the roof. His dad kept yelling, "Jump, I'll catch you." And the boy yelled, "Dad, I can't see you." And the dad shouted, "But I can see you, and that's all that matters." That's how it is with God. Out of this passage, if I think of providence and power. Those are the two words that come to me. The power to see it through because you trust in the providence of God. Verse 11, Paul says, "I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content." Verse 13, he says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." There's your power. Verse 19, "My God will supply every need." There's the providence. These statements just blend together. How can you be content in whatever situation? Living by Christ strengthening, and Christ strengthens our trust by supplying our needs. How do you do all things? Be content. Trust God to provide. Why is it important to know that God supplies your needs? Because it strengthens you and teaches you to be content. We need to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Don't let the world and the situations dictate how you are inside. Trust in God. That's your pillar. That's how you get the stability to the point where even if the world is falling apart, you are strong and firm because your trust is in God. Learn to be content in whatever situation by the power of God, by the power of Christ who strengthens you, and the power of the providence of God to supply all of your needs. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and that means so much more when you know what Paul was talking about. So the invitation is going to be for those who feel like they need the strengthening, who feel like the world has been dictating their lives. Let Christ be your pillar. The invitation is going to be for you as we sing.